Hello, everybody. Happy Monday afternoon. Happy Victory Monday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. And today we have another Seahawks video to get to. That's right, even the big come from behind victory last night, less than 24 hours ago, cannot deter me from making new content, cannot deter me from talking about how this team can get better. But first, before we get to the football content, I want to celebrate a new subscriber milestone. We just hit 1,350 subscribers. I want to thank all my new subscribers and all my old subscribers for helping me get to this number. If you guys were not watching my videos, I would not be making them. Let's keep pushing the number. Let's try to get to 1,400 before the end of the bye week. Let's try to get to 1,500 by the end of the month. Let's try to get to 2,000 by the end of the football season. And yeah, things are going great on the channel. So today, what are we going to take a look at? Well, this video is something of an addendum to the video I made 2 weeks ago. You may recall 2 weeks ago I made a video that talked about the bottom feeders of the NFL, specifically the 0-3 teams. We had 8 teams that had 0 wins after their first 3 games. And I discussed those teams as being teams that needed to give up on this season because nothing good was going to happen. They needed to just shed some salary, shed some players, get rid of their veterans, and try again in the future because obviously nothing good is happening this year. Because, as I said in that video, your odds of making the playoffs after starting 0-3 was about 3%. And as bad as that 0-3 stat was, it was about 3.3% chance of making the playoffs after starting 0-3. Your odds of making the playoffs at 1-4 are probably a little worse when you think about it because you have fewer games left to figure it out. 1-4 is probably a bigger hole than 0-3 if you just think about it logically. Now, I pulled up this chart. I managed to find this chart on Reddit. This took a look at every team from 1990 to 2013 and tried to figure out what their odds of making the playoffs were after starting at a certain record. And as you can see, according to this chart, if you start 1-4, your odds of making the playoffs are actually 5%, which is a little bit better than 0-3. But if you apply some further logic to fill out the rest of this chart for the time that's not accounted for, you can probably get this number down to about 2%, I think, because as you can see, this chart only covers 1990 to 2013. We know that no team in the last 6 years has started 1-4 and made the playoffs. So every team that started 1-4 from 2013 on has failed to make the postseason. So that probably brings this number down to 4, maybe 3%. And if you roll in the 80s teams, and if you take a look at the teams in the 80s that started 1-4 and made the playoffs, you find very few. So this number probably ducks down closer to 2%. So based on my rough estimates combined with this hard data, I can safely conclude that it is slightly less likely to make the playoffs after starting 1-4 than it even is at 1-3. So, or excuse me, 0-3. So basically, the teams that were 0-3 after 3 games were in a very bad spot, but the teams that are 1-4 right now are probably in a worse spot. So we're going to clean up. We're going to take a look at these teams, these 4 teams that did not start 0-3 but have started 1-4 or have a chance to start 1-4 and will know in the coming hours or days. So we're going to start with 2 teams that won their first game of the season, started 1-0. It seemed like things were on the rise, seems like things were going good, and then no. No. They've lost 4 straight since winning their opener, and they are who we thought they were. And we're going to take a look at those rosters, which contain some good, talented, capable, potential-filled players, and we're going to see if we can cook up a deal to make this Seahawks team better, just like we did 2 weeks ago. We did it with the winless teams after 3 games. Now we're going to do it with the 1-win teams after 5 games. All right. So here's what I got. We're going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They won their first game of the year against the Colts, and the Colts are not even a bad team, so they were feeling pretty good about themselves. Since then, it's been downhill. Loss. They're about ready to pack it up. So what can we get from the Jacksonville Jaguars? Here's what I saw after combing their roster. I saw a handful of players that I think could be had from this Jacksonville team for a fair price. We're going to start with the offense here. The first name that jumps out to me a little bit is Dede Westbrook, a wide receiver. He's 26 years old. He's got 2 straight seasons where he was targeted 101 times and brought in 66 passes, and that was playing with guys like Blake Bortles and now Gardner Minshew. So he had 2 pretty productive seasons in Jacksonville. Not big production, but he was involved in the offense significantly. And then this year so far, he's been a complete afterthought. Jacksonville seems happy to build their offense around DJ Chark, who is their stud at receiver, and Laviska Shenault Jr., one of their stud rookies, and maybe even Keenan Cole Sr. Those are their guys going forward for whoever their franchise QB is going to be. Probably not Gardner Minshew, but maybe, and more than likely whoever they draft next year. But I don't think they're going to trade Chark or Shenault. They see these 2 guys as being part of the future for them with whoever their next QB is. But Dede Westbrook has been completely left by the wayside. I think there's a little bit of talent there. He's in his final year of his rookie deal. He's probably going to be very cheap. I would at least kick the tires on that trade. The other name I see on this offense that interests me would be Cam Robinson, the left tackle. He's a 25-year-old left tackle with a good pedigree. He went 34th overall a few years ago, also in his final year of a rookie deal. Pro Football Focus has kind of been up and down on Cam Robinson throughout his career. So far this year, they think he's playing pretty good. Last year, they thought he was average. The year before, they thought he was good. And the year before that, they thought he was average again. So Cam Robinson, very talented, hasn't exactly produced at a high level yet, but he hasn't been bad. Could the change of scenery help him? Could he be an heir apparent to Dwayne Brown after this season? Could he move to right tackle for one season and displace Brandon Shell? Depending on the answers to those questions, I would definitely try to trade for Cam Robinson because he's about to be due a decent chunk of change, and Jacksonville might rather get a little bit of assets for him now than be forced to give him a big contract when they're probably going to be in a transition year next year, and you just don't know what's going to happen. So Cam Robinson may very well be available for the right price. All right, we're moving on to defense now. Looking at these players on defense, there's not a lot that interests me, but I did see a few names that are at least worth talking about. First is Taven Bryan, defensive tackle. He's only 24 years old, and he's in his 3rd year. He's a blue chipper. He went 29th overall, but he's underachieved quite a bit so far. Very little production through 37 career games. He's played in every game in his career so far. He's in his 3rd season. He's got 3 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. So he's not really producing. He's not the player that Jacksonville thought they were getting when they drafted him a couple years ago. I think that he may be a very talented guy who needs a change of scenery. Maybe we could provide that change of scenery. Or he could just be a bust. In fact, that's probably more likely. But at this point, you could probably get him for a very cheap price and just see what he has for the rest of the year. And if you don't see anything, you just let him go. He's still on his rookie deal, obviously, so can't be the worst idea to at least take a look at it. Next name is somebody who I doubt is really going to happen, but I'm going to go ahead and throw Myles Jack out there. He's a 25-year-old freak athlete. Over the last 2 seasons, he's made 117 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. He's missed some time, especially last year he missed some time. He's in the first year of a 4-year, $57 million extension, which makes any kind of trade unlikely. I just don't think that Jacksonville views Myles Jack as being part of their future anymore. He's not the player that they thought they were getting when they drafted him. So to me, they might be willing to dump him for a pretty cheap price. Maybe you could even get some kind of contract renegotiation in there. But yeah, I'm not crazy excited about it either. I don't think he's the best player, but he is a freak athlete, this Myles Jack. So worth talking about. The last name is somebody who I probably would not be mentioning if he was not a former Seahawk, but I'm going to throw this one out here real quick because he would be really cheap. Cassius Marsh Sr., 28 years old. He would mostly just be for depth, not a dynamic playmaker, but he's not a bad idea to pick up for depth at defensive end and maybe a little Leo. Over the last 2 seasons, he has 74 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, which is actually quite good, 8 sacks, which is solid and would be better than most players on this team, honestly, and 42 pressures. So he's actually produced a healthy amount the last 2 years. Not the worst pickup just somebody who might be a little bit better than, Shaquem Griffin or Alton Robinson. But at the same time, those guys are young. Maybe you'd rather put them out there than a veteran like Marsh, who's already capped out. I don't know. It can't be the worst idea to get another body in there who's reasonably productive. And Cassius Marsh is on a 1 year, $600,000 deal, so he's super cheap. So Cassius Marsh, not terribly excited, but I wanted to throw him out there. It doesn't seem like a bad idea to me. Okay, we are moving on. Let's go to the football team. Let's go to the Washington football team. Let's see what we can see from this team, because this is another squad. They won their first game. Things seem to be going okay. They were like, wow, we got this divisional win. We got a big comeback win over Philly. And then, no. Loss. They're 1-4. They should be looking to cut some salary and get rid of some veterans. So, what do we got? What do we got on this team? What do I like? Well, the only guy on offense that catches my eye, but this guy really caught my eye, in fairness, is Morgan Moses, the right tackle. And this guy seems like he might be the perfect fit for this offense and for the Redskins, or football team's, trade needs, because he's 29 years old. Very highly rated right tackle by Pro Football Focus in the last several years. If you take a look at his Pro Football Focus grades in recent years, it's always like good, great, really good, great. He's had a great career in Washington, according to Pro Football Focus. So he's a clear upgrade over Brandon Shell, even if you think Shell isn't that bad, which at this point I'm starting to come around a little bit on him. But Morgan Moses is a clear upgrade. His cap hit this year is big. He did get a big contract extension a few years ago. It's $8.6 million cap hit this year, $9.65 next year, with only $2 million dead if you cut him, and then he's due about $7.75 million in 2022 with zero dead if you cut him. So you can trade him. You're going to be paying him significant money, but not a huge amount of money. And it's easy to get rid of him if things don't work out. It's going to be easy to cut him next year or the year after if things aren't working out. But he's 29. The odds are by the time Washington gets their crap figured out, he's going to be like 32 years old. They might not want to mess with that. I think that Washington should be begging to trade Morgan Moses, and the Seahawks should be begging to be there to catch him as he falls. All right, now we're going to swing over to defense, and they have a few pieces on this defense that I kind of like. The first one is obvious. We've been talking about this one for months. Ryan Kerrigan, the defensive end, the backup defensive end, because look at these blue chippers on this defensive line, guys. The football team might be trash. This is one trash football team, but look at these blue chippers on this defensive line, man. Anyway, Ryan Kerrigan is 32 years old, so he's getting up there in years. Over the last 2 years, he's still been productive, 68 tackles, 18.5 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, and 55 pressures. So he's still getting to the QB. So far this year, his production is down. I mean, last year it was down a little bit too, but he's still got 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 4 pressures in the first 5 games. And when you consider how little he's playing because of these guys, that's actually pretty good. He's in the final year of a big contract, so $11.7 million cap hit. We would have to absorb some of it, but probably not all of it. It would probably be like a 4th rounder or 5th rounder at this point, because at 32 years old, you just don't have that much value. So this should be a slam dunk trade for the Skins, or football team, and it should be a slam dunk try to trade for if you're the Seahawks. So make it happen, guys. This guy can still get to the QB. This guy has still gotten to the QB at a pretty impressive clip in recent years for a guy of his age, especially with the teammates he's had to play with, which are some true blue chippers. All right, last 2 names on this defense. We got Kendall Fuller, 25 years old. He's got a decent pedigree. He went 84th overall not that long ago. He was on the Chiefs the last 2 seasons. He won a Super Bowl. Didn't have great performance in Kansas City. He does have 14 pass deflections and 2 picks over the last 2 years. His coverage metrics were a little soft. He gave up a lot in Kansas City, but so far this year, he's actually been playing really good. He's got 3 interceptions. His coverage stats are clean for a cornerback. The only issue is he's in the first year of a 4-year, $40 million extension. So 4-year, $40 million, that's tough. That's tough to swallow, but if you believe in this guy's talent and you believe in what he's done so far this year for the football team, and you're not really high on Shaq right now, which I'm not, then there's something here. I don't hate kicking the tires on this idea. Final name is Ronald Darby, the other cornerback on this team. He's 26 years old. Good pedigree. He went 50th overall not that long ago. Last 2 seasons, he was on the Eagles. 80 tackles, 23 pass deflections, 3 picks. His coverage metrics were pretty lackluster, though he gave up quite a bit, especially in 2019. But he'd be very cheap. We are talking a 1-year, $4 million deal. And at the end of the day, it might be a good idea to bet on somebody who has been a very good cornerback in the past and see what you can get out of him. So it wouldn't cost very much. I think Washington would be happy to get a little asset for a corner who won't be there next year. And right now, I'm thinking about some creative solutions to how we can address the secondary problem in this defense, because Shaq has underwhelmed me this year, and Trey has been the most underwhelming player on this team probably. So that's it for the football team, the Redskins, whatever, Washington, the DC Daisies, I don't know. Okay, so now we're going to move into the realm of the possible, not the definite. There are 2 teams in the NFL right now that are not 1-4, but could be 1-4 very soon. We have the Los Angeles Chargers up next. They are 1-3, and they play tonight against the Saints. We're going to know in about 7-8 hours if the Chargers are 1-4 or not. They play the Saints. They're going to be underdogs. It seems to me very likely that they're going to be 1-4. So, with that in mind, when the dust clears on the game tonight, if they are 1-4, who are they going to be willing to trade? I think the answer is not very much, unfortunately. There are a lot of players, especially on this offense, that jump out to me. You know, Keenan Allen's awesome. Mike Williams in the final year of his rookie deal, I think, final year of he's in his 4th year, and he got the 5th-year extension, so he's near the end of his rookie deal. Hunter Henry's at least an interesting talent, although I wouldn't really want to trade for him. Forrest Lamp interests me. There are some guys on this team that I really like on offense and defense, but the thing with the Chargers is this. They just moved to LA, so they need to bank a good, productive, winning season quickly to get the interest of the fans. And they have their franchise QB, and I'm sure that the Chargers right now are thinking next year is the year. They're thinking 2021 is the year we compete for a Super Bowl, because Herbert's going to have some experience. We're going to have all these guys, all this talent, and next year's the year. So basically, they don't want to trade nobody, because in their mind, even though this year is a wrap, next year is going to be the year they play for a Super Bowl. So the young guys they have with talent, the rookies who are near the end of their rookie deal, some of the middle-aged veterans, I don't think they're going to be willing to trade any of them. So unfortunately, there's not going to be much here. I can only find 2 names that I believe that the Chargers would consider trading. The first, this one doesn't interest me so much, but Linval Joseph, the defensive tackle, he's got a history of elite play. He made 2 Pro Bowls on the Vikings. He's 32 years old, which is getting up there for sure, but he can still play. The last 2 years, he's got 102 tackles, 4 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 12 pressures. He's already got 5 pressures this year, actually, which is really good for a defensive tackle like Linval Joseph. So he's bringing the pressure so far this season. He's in the first year of a 2-year, $17 million contract, so it wouldn't be too expensive. I just can't get excited for another run stuffer. We have enough run stuffers on this team. I know that, but that being said, the run defense, not great last night, so we can't exactly say that everything's great there. And the only other name I see that the Chargers might be willing to part with that I'm interested in would be Desmond King II. This is a guy that we've talked about a little bit in my streams. He's 25 years old, and he made an all-pro team in 2018, and since then, milk carton. Haven't really noticed him, hasn't really done much. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened that year. I don't know what's happened since, but in 2018, he had 62 tackles, 3 picks, 10 passes defended, and he only allowed 5.8 yards per target, which is really, really good for a cornerback on a good team. And ever since then, it just hasn't been the same. He's dropped off big time. but he's in the final year of a small rookie deal. Maybe he just needs to move to a different team. He's also a very good blitzer. Over the last 2 years, he has 10 QB pressures. I just don't think you're going to see the Chargers be willing to part with any of their linebackers or Casey Hayward or, obviously not Bosa or Tillery or Bulaga or Keenan Allen, because I think they think that 21 is their year. 2021 is going to be their year. That's just my feeling. So, unfortunately, even if the Chargers go like 1-7, I don't think they're going to be willing to part with any of these really interesting players. But that's what I got for them. Final team, we have the Detroit Lions, who are 1-3, and they are 6 days away from possibly starting 1-4. They do play the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is probably a dub, but the Lions are no good either. You don't know what's going to happen in that game. So they may very well be 1-4 in a week, and I'm just going to go ahead and get them out of the way. If they start 1-4, if they lose in 6 days, who might they be willing to give up? They might be done with Kerryon Johnson, but I'm not interested in that, so we're going to skip over that. I will say they should probably try to get some assets for Kerryon, but I'm not interested in that. 2 pieces on this offense that I kind of like. The first is Marvin Jones Jr. I'm not jumping up and down in my seat over this one. He's 30 years old. He's been very productive in his career, but so far in 2020, he's just not doing much. He's got 12 catches in 4 games. But over the last 2 years, in which he's only played 22 games, he's got 97 catches, 1,300 yards, and 14 touchdowns. So he has been productive the last 2 years. He's in the last year of his contract as well, so the contract is no concern. He's got a $9.2 million cap hit this year, and then it's done. So if you want to pick up another receiver for the back end of the year, back end of the season, then Marvin Jones Jr. might be all right. The only other guy on this offense that caught my eye is Tyrell Crosby, but this is actually really appealing to me. Tyrell Crosby is a 25-year-old right tackle in his 3rd season. Pro Football Focus has really liked this guy so far. He's gotten good to great grades every year of his career so far, and he was a 5th-round pick, so he's really kind of come out of nowhere to be a really good right tackle for Detroit. I don't think the Lions will trade Taylor Decker because they just gave him that big extension. Like, Taylor Decker to me is probably part of their plans for the future. Tyrell Crosby, I'm not so convinced. I mean, he's a right tackle. They already invested a ton of money into this offensive line. They might decide, let's get some assets for him because Detroit's about to need a new coach. And when they get the new coach, they're probably going to need a new QB. And they need a whole bunch of stuff on defense. They're a ways away. Maybe Tyrell Crosby is a quality player you could pry away from them before they can get good again, before they can even get, decent again. So I would at least be calling them about it. I don't know if they would do it. They might view him as part of the future. I think they probably should view him as part of the future. But if they don't, we can be the team that benefits. All right, we're moving on to defense now. What do the Lions have on defense? Quite a bit, actually. First name that caught my eye is Nick Williams, the defensive tackle. 30 years old. He was a career journeyman who did nothing until last year. Last year on the Chicago Bears, he broke out, had 6 sacks, 42 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 12 pressures, even though he didn't play that much. He was part of a rotation. He didn't get on the field but for like less than 50% of defensive snaps, and he produced big. So far this year, he's gone to Detroit, hasn't really done much. So I don't know what to make of it. Did he just have a big contract year in 2019? Is he talented and Matt Patricia just doesn't know what the hell he's doing? I would always bet on Matt Patricia not knowing what the hell he's doing. So sign me up for that. He's in the first year of a 2-year deal with $10 million, but it's got an easy out after 1 year. So if you trade for him and he sucks, you cut him, no problem. Contract is not a concern at all. And let's also talk about the other defensive tackle on this team, Danny Shelton. 27-year-old blue chipper, went 12th overall once upon a time. 12th overall, coming off his career best year in New England. Coming off a year in New England where he had 61 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 9 pressures, and was one of the linchpins of an elite defense, maybe the best defense in the league last year. And he also got to the QB a healthy amount, too, for a nose tackle who weighs 340 pounds. He'd be cheap. He's in the first year of a 2-year deal, due only $8 million, with an easy out after 1 year. pick him up. If it don't work out, you kick him out the door. If he does work out, you got him for cheap in 2021. All right, next name is going to be a little tougher to justify, but let's talk about Trey Flowers for a second here. He's 27 years old, got a good history of getting to the quarterback in his career. If you look at his career ever since his rookie year where he did nothing, he's getting 7, 8, 9, 10 sacks a year. Last 2 seasons, he's got 14.5 sacks, 65 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, and a whooping 71 pressures. So he is getting to that QB, disruptive, one of the best players on this team. Not made a big splash so far in 2020. Not putting up the big numbers right now. He's in the second year of a 5-year, $90 million contract, which makes a trade hard as hell. But we got to at least consider our options. This is a very, very good defensive end who would transform our pass rush. We'd have to give up some stuff to get him, I'm sure, but at the same time, Detroit might be thinking, we got to get out from under this contract. This is killing us. So Trey Flowers is on the list. Final name for this team, final name for this video. I'm just going to put this out there more because it's fun than anything else, but Desmond Trufant. Again, the secondary needs a little help, and Desmond Trufant is a 30-year-old former Pro Bowler. It's been a while since he made a Pro Bowl, I get that, but honestly, last year he played pretty good. He had 4 interceptions last year, and his coverage metrics were okay. 68 tackles, 4 picks, 19 pass deflections in the last 2 years. He really hasn't played that much in 2020, but he's got some recent history that says he can still play. He's in the first year of a 2-year, $20 million contract, so the contract is not terrible. It's not ideal, but it's okay. I don't know. I'm not in love with it. I don't want to trade for these guys right when they're about to be washed up, but maybe Trufant has another season left in him, man. All right, so that'll do it. That takes us through every team that is either definitely or probably going into fire sale mode. So we looked at 12 teams and tried to figure out who we could poach. Quite a few players we've looked at over the last 2 weeks. If there are any teams that enter the fire sale sweepstakes before the end of this season, before the trade deadline, I'll make a video about them as well. But for now, that's all I see. Who do you guys want to trade for? What do you think about these ideas? Which players did I mention that appealed to you? Let me know in the comments. Peace out, go Hawks. We got some games the next 2 days to watch. I will probably be going live tonight on Dragon Quest, so come catch me then. And, yep, that'll do it. That'll do it. Let's make a deal, everybody. Let's make a deal.